there I was, lying in bed about 8, 9 o'clock. I poured myself a very small dram of whiskey because I'm scaling back the alcohol. Just whiskey as well, keeping it on the down low. Just a glass. Doing my usual mind-numbing routine before I go to bed, which is I play Battlegrounds on Hearthstone, the most mind-numbing game ever created. So simple, so easy. Just automated, just that card, take that. So you have a whiskey, you play Battlegrounds, and it just sends me off to sleep better than anything, really. It's fantastic. I totally recommend it as a insomnia cure. Anyway, and then while that was happening, in the middle of the night, there was an announcement by Riot Games. They've decided to take action and issue a competitive ruling against former TSM coach Peter Zhang, aka Zhang Peter Zhang Yi, and he's been permanently banned from being associated in any capacity with a team or organization in any Riot Games sanctioned tournament. And this is, of course, as a direct result of my reporting. You might recall earlier in the year, I made my glorious return back to League of Legends, despite still, after 8 years, being Voldemort, not allowed to be talked about on the sub. They still automatically removed the name Richard Lewis from the League of Legends sub. It's still a filtered phrase. You're not allowed to use it. Earlier in the year, I got wind of, there was this thing happening where essentially a coach on a team had been given all of this autonomy by TSM, and he was being sort of told, you can go and recruit players for us. We trust your judgment, but here's some targets, but we trust your judgment, and we want you to go over, to China and basically negotiate these agreements with these players. And what I heard Peter Zhang was doing was basically going over there and sort of negotiating with these players and saying, like, listen, I'll get you in TSM, I can get you in TSM. They'll agree to have you in if I say so. In exchange for that, I'll need a cut of the cash. I can hear someone crying outside. What's that? Scenes, absolute scenes. Probably Reggie. Definitely Reggie. Anyway, so the reality is it looked like basically he was acting in a dual capacity as sort of an agent and coach, and obviously big on the TSM recruitment policy. So he was sort of abusing his position. And I was like, listen, it's very hard to crack cases like that when it comes to China, because obviously there's a wall of silence. There's a lot of cultural stuff where people don't like to talk about it. Very respectful of the relationships in the hierarchy, kind of like that big brother kind of concept you might see in Korea. I was like, but I'll give it a go. I'll try running it down, and I worked on it for a bit, and I was reaching into all my, extensive source network. Some sources I haven't talked to in years and years, because obviously they're League of Legends sources, and eventually was able to get enough where I saw, pretty compelling evidence to publish the story, and did. And it was kind of weird because for part of the story, I actually was able to make contact with Peter Zhang himself, and Peter Zhang himself basically incriminated himself on a number of key details of the story. Like, for example, he said, oh yeah, I did take the money from Swordart. I did keep his money when I sold his car for him. And I was going, what? You're supposed to deny everything. This is how this conversation usually goes. And he went, yeah, I just basically pocketed the money. And he said he wanted it back or he was going to go public. So then I told him I was going to give it back to him. Okay, do you realize that's bad? Yeah, that's bad, but I didn't do the other stuff that they said. And I was like, okay, but I did take some of their money, but there was a good reason for taking their money. I was sending it to someone else on their behalf, and I can prove that I took their money and prove that I sent it to someone else. And I'm going, what the fuck is going on here? So we had this long conversation, and so it was that bizarre situation where 70% of the bad things that were being alleged were confirmed and corroborated by the person that was being accused of doing them. It's like, in terms of it being a slam dunk, it doesn't really get easier than that. It was like a confession. Now, he was saying never acted as an agent, never did no quid pro quo, never picked players for TSM in exchange for money. That was his stumbling block. And he released a tweet longer after I put out my first report and said, there are many things wrong in the Deserto article. And I was like, I gave you complete carte blanche to make a statement about this. Anyway, after that, TSM conducted their own investigation, and obviously TSM have even more access to these types of records than I do. They've got access to player financial records, they've got access to Peter Zhang's records, they've got access to chat logs, things I couldn't have necessarily seen. Basically, they paid a law firm to conduct an investigation, and the law firm came out and corroborated everything I'd said and added a few more specific details. Now, there were some people in the background saying, oh, he's going to contest this, he's going to lawyer up. And I was like, I don't know about that, homie. Maybe that's not how you play it. He'd gone back to China at this point, of course. And so anyway, the gears of Riot move slow, but they've conducted their investigation. So we're now at 3 investigations, right? And this is important. You'll understand why in a bit. But we're now at 3 investigations, and Riot have decided, yes, everything I report was right. Their findings are almost verbatim what I put in my original report. Here we go. This is their League of Legends competitive ruling involving Peter Zhang Yi. And you can see here the TLDR because, and this is by their the commish Chris Greeley. So TLDR, know your audience. Here's an official disciplinary ruling from our league issued by the commissioner, but our audience are children and morons. So here's TLDR, very professional. Anyway, TLDR. Peter Zhang Yi is permanently banned from any association or affiliation with a team or organisation in a Riot-sanctioned competition for engaging in what we believe to be alarming and unethical behaviour toward current and former TSM players and staff. Peter Zhang violated the LCS rule set as well as the LCS eligibility and release agreement by diverting portions of player salaries to accounts belonging to Peter Zhang and his associates, by misleading and failing to fully compensate a former TSM player for the sale of a player's car, and by soliciting loans from TSM players and staff. And again, all of those details were placed in my original report. It's not without risk, because obviously I'm returning to a field where, I haven't reported on it for a while, and loads of people, as we'll get to, were super skeptical that I got the story right. A lot of people wanted to side with Peter Zhang. We did a Horseman episode about it, and loads of people were mega, I don't know, what if TSM are using him as a scapegoat? There was a lot of anti-TSM sentiment, so a lot of people were thinking maybe the coach is being thrown under the bus, and that of course would mean my reporting was wrong in some way. So anyway, context. All LCS players and staff must abide by the LCS rule set, but furthermore, all coaches must agree and sign the LCS eligibility and release agreement upon addition to an LCS roster. Part of that rule set prohibits behaviour that violates the standards integrity set by the LCS. Moreover, Section 2 of that eligibility and release agreement mandates LCS players and coaches agree to abide by standards of good conduct, fair play, and good sportsmanship. The LCS may take aggravating circumstances into account in regards to the severity of any issued penalty. Here's their final and definitive version of events, and tell me if this deviates in any way from my reporting in any significant way. Peter Zhang first joined TSM as their academy head coach in November 2018. He progressed through TSM, ascending to the role of head of player development in December 2021. Throughout his time at TSM, Peter Zhang was listed as a coach on the global contract database, agreeing to and signing the LCS eligibility and release agreement at the staff of each LCS season. On March 18th, 2022, TSM terminated Peter Zhang based on allegations of conflict of interest and unethical practices made by TSM's players and staff members. You'll also notice, because it's Riot, they can't acknowledge I exist. Even though I've done probably more than any journalist in the history of their game, going back to 2013 when I first started reporting on League of Legends. I've done more than any journalist in the history of the game to keep their space safe and expose scumbags. They don't acknowledge that I exist. TSM retained a third-party law firm to investigate these allegations of wrongdoing after my report. TSM and the third-party law firm fully cooperated with Riot investigators by providing a comprehensive overview regarding Peter Zhang's behavior while he was affiliated with the org. Between December 2021 and February 2022, Peter Zhang diverted approximately $250,000 in salary payments from two of the TSM players. The two concerned players were to receive a significant portion of their salaries through a third-party entity, herein referred to as the entity in China. The entity sourced multiple bank accounts from the players in order to deposit their salaries. Peter Zhang provided the entity with accounts supposedly on behalf of the players. However, the accounts provided were overwhelmingly affiliated with Peter Zhang. As a result, the majority of the players' salaries were diverted into accounts owned by him. And this is where it was fucking like wild when I was like talking to him and sort of looking into all of this story. Nobody was disputing that this money was going into these accounts, and nobody was disputing that this money was going into accounts, and it was totally fine that, you know, Peter had access to this money and other parties in China. In fact, that was the way it was designed. It was designed so it was heading to bank accounts that Chinese people could access, essentially. It was like, this is fucking crazy. In addition, evidence suggests that during his employment with TSM, Peter Zhang shared non-public information regarding TSM's recruiting decisions, potentially in exchange for personal benefit. And what they mean by that is he had access to, you know, obviously scouting plans and, you know, the type of players they wanted to get, players they specifically wanted to get, salaries they were willing to go up to for those players. And essentially he was like giving away TSM's bargaining power in exchange for the quid pro quo of getting, you know, his guy in and doing the best deal for them. Now, again, he vehemently denies this, but this has now been found by a law firm, and obviously Riot Games would be on the hook themselves now for any particular defamation or lies or whatever if they were wrong. So, you know, I'm feeling pretty confident that my report was right at this point, even to the degree where, do we need to still add allegedly? Probably not. Additionally, he agreed to sell the car of a former TSM player. That's the Sword Art incident. By the way, saw a pretty funny meme on this for TSM, took Sword Art's money. Which whoever came up with that, well done. I like that one. Anyway, a former TSM player, and to send the player the full proceeds of the sale. The evidence on file indicates that Peter Zhang misled the players at various points, informing the player that he could not sell the car. But in March 2022, Peter Zhang told the player he should assume that Peter Zhang bought the car from the player for $80,000. Peter Zhang repaid $35,000 to the player, but the $45,000 balance owed to the player has still not yet been repaid. Between January 18th, 2022 and March 18th, 2022, Peter Zhang solicited a total of 8 TSM players, over which he had managerial authority and staff members to lend him approximately $15,000. TSM became aware of Peter Zhang's solicitation on March the 18th and took immediate action to reverse pending wire transfers, preventing Peter Zhang from receiving at least $20,000 more in loans. To date, approximately $4,500 remains unpaid to the players who had loaned Peter Zhang the money. During the course of the investigation, Riot investigators, TSM and TSM's retained third-party law firm reviewed interviews with 12 witnesses, communications between involved TSM members and Peter Zhang, and bank transfer records. Finally, Riot investigators invited Peter Zhang to submit a statement on the above allegations. Peter Zhang submitted a statement but failed to provide any compelling evidence refuting the accuracy of the findings of the report submitted by TSM's retained third-party law firm. Indeed, it was also in one of my reports, he was kind of dodging them. They were asking him, the law firm, to come and basically, like, you know, talk and give his side of things, but he didn't want to, or was being advised not to by his legal counsel as well. So the ruling is that he engaged in unethical behaviour towards current and former TSM players and staff in violation of all of the rules above, and he's now permanently banned from any association or affiliation with a team or organisation in a riot-sanctioned competition. It's all over for him. And again, all of that was initially put into the public domain by me, by my reporting. He's done it again. Is this one of the biggest stories of the year? Who knows? Not for me to say, but maybe it is. Maybe it is. Maybe not. The interesting part of this is obviously because it was a competitive ruling. The riot content, no matter what, is allowed on the subreddit, and I just wanted to show that nowhere was it sort of mentioned that all of this was sort of original reporting from me. The original stories, of course, were removed from the subreddit. It was one of those big stories you couldn't read on the subreddit. They've even recently on the subreddit, they're doing this weird thing now where if another publication mentions me as being the original source, they remove their articles as well. This happened with the last story I did on TSM, where .esports did an article saying, hey, you know, Richard Lewis originally reported this, and that made it onto the subreddit, and then the mods actually deleted it for some reason. The original version of this report didn't have my name in it, but the dot did this version here where they've added my name now. This original report down here, basically they've added like report by Richard Lewis of Deserto, but none of this was in the original thing. I'm guessing they put me in once they realized they weren't going to get Reddit traction. So that's what you have to do now. You have to pretend I don't exist in order to get your reporting on the subreddit. Anyway, the reason I'm talking about this on stream, other than the fact, you know, people call you a loser 24/7, so it's always important to sort of parrot and, you know, trumpet your victories, is this. Doublelift decided he wanted to weigh in for reasons I don't understand. I'll just fast forward about 5 minutes in, because he spends 5 minutes reading the tweet longer. I already talked about this at the time. He was so adamant that the article had to be wrong, so adamant that I had to be wrong, calls me like some nobody writer. I don't know, like, I can never really understand, like, what is it going to take me to do for people to understand what it is I do? And that maybe, I get it, you're super important, you know, you're a big deal. But, you know, I do this for a living. I've been trained to do this. I've done it for, you know, 2 decades. You know, maybe I'm good at this. Like, maybe I actually know things you don't. But no, of course, that never occurs to the players. But anyway, we'll get into this.
And players for help. I know it was wrong of me, and I'm really sorry. The money has been returned to all the players, and I apologize to all of them, and then talked to Sword and his family and are resolving the situation. My feelings. Last thing I want to talk about is my personal feelings about everything that has happened. Actually, let's just skip this part for now, and let's just talk about these parts, the earlier parts, because the feelings part is probably the part that matters the least. First things first, Peter Zhang is a dumbass for taking Sword's money and spending it on whatever it is. You know, we'll never actually really know the truth unless he super goes into detail and gives all of the receipts for basically the fact that he spent the money on his grandmother's surgery, right? Like that part is just completely unproven and can never actually be proven unless...
Just to go into this, so first of all, if you take somebody else's money under false pretenses, it doesn't really matter what you spend it on, whether it's an emergency or a good cause or whatever. It doesn't really make you a dumbass. It makes you a thief and a liar, which is fine, I guess, in Doublelift's world. But the reality is as well, saying you could never prove it, well, of course you absolutely can prove it. It would be very much within Peter's power to prove it, wouldn't it? You would be able to show a receipt from the hospital for the medical services you paid for. These things have invoices, you know? But no, that was never forthcoming, and that was obviously never forthcoming because that was a lie designed to elicit sympathy. I don't know what he spent the money on. As I said, my read is always people getting into gambling debts. It's why, you know, you've got to be super careful and not get out of your depth when it comes to that type of thing. But, you know, whatever.
He wants to essentially like publicize his expenses on his grandmother's surgery, give everyone peace of mind that like the money was actually being used regardless of if it was being used to that cause or not. The truth is that Peter Zhang is extremely stupid with money, and he always probably has been. I'm not that surprised. He's just terrible with money. He's absolutely terrible with money, and he shouldn't be asking people for loans. So just by that grounds, I think he's justified in being fired. I think that's totally fair to fire him for that. What I don't think is fair is like all this part, which was part of the Dexterdo, all of the part where it's about like investigating him for like wrongdoing with these players' contracts and like manipulating the roster and like playing both sides where he's like working for the team, but he's also simultaneously like taking a percentage of the player contract, which is super unethical. I think this part is the part that I think is extremely fucking weird. Like, first off, I don't understand how Dexterdo got this rumor, I guess.
Because I am the greatest esports journalist that has ever been, and I take all this shit super seriously and have a 2-decade-long extensive source network. And when an investigation matters, people turn me on to shit. Probably. I mean, that's just a guess, but who knows?
Imagining that somebody at TSM came to them and tried to leak this without doing their due diligence about whether or not it was actually true. So, I mean, I feel like he already fucked up really, really bad. And this is something that is
obviously I'm known for never doing my due diligence, obviously. Known for that.
Grounds for being fired. But then when you like add on that other stuff, it's kind of like you're scapegoating this person who already made like a fucking massive mistake, but then you're scapegoating him for all this other stuff and creating this rumor that is like literally life ruining. If the only thing that Peter Zhang did was he was a complete dumbass with the money that he owed, I think that like that's something you can move past in your life, right? Like people won't trust you with loaning money. They won't trust you.
Now, keep in mind, remember, being a dumbass from loaning the money was that he said, I'll sell your car, and then kept over half of the money to himself after selling it. And, I guess we can all move past that. That's fine.
To, like, maybe sell something for them overseas. They won't trust you with a loan. That's, like, not life-ruining, right? The part where it's life-ruining is accusing him of something like this. This is seriously something that could, like, it could keep him unemployed for the next 10 years. He could have to fucking go work at McDonald's. This part where he's like, he's being an idiot with people's money and asking people for loans, that's not life ruining. So you have to differentiate like the difference between these two accusations. One of them is going to make him lose his job and probably make him look bad. The other one is actually going to get him into like legal trouble. It's going to completely change all of his job opportunities for the rest of his life. If you're going to make this kind of accusation to Peter Zhang, you need to provide evidence.
Now, I had the evidence, and as I already said, much of that evidence was provided by Peter Zhang, and that's in the article. That's not, Richard's revealing a source. No, it was explicitly said in the original report. The original report has a statement from Peter Zhang saying, yes, I did the following. I can't show the rest. I can't reveal sources. I don't know why low IQ people never understand this about journalism. If someone's on background, it's called that for a reason. If someone's off the record, it's called that for a reason. But, the law firm that privately investigated it found my fault. Are they gonna ruin their reputation as a law firm? Sure, you can go, TSM hired them, so they got a vested interest. All right, fine. And Riot have now also conducted their own. So I don't know. I think probably the evidence I had in retrospect was absolutely sound, and I was right to run this story.
I looked into it myself, right? Because I'm curious about whether or not this is actually true. It turns out, from what I can understand, that it's not true. Because Shanyi will come out and say shit like, actually, wait, where'd it go? Yeah, here it is. Peter never take my yen. Like, the players are siding with Peter Zhang.
Yes, this was one player who we can maybe speculate a little as being, either very grateful to the coach for bringing him into TSM in the first place. Maybe there's another power dynamic. Maybe there's something else going on we don't know about. But one player saying Peter Zhang never take my money after he was asked to say this by Peter Zhang is apparently that carries more weight than an independent reporter without a dog in the fight. Just trying to keep esports clean, same as always. I criticize TSM all the fucking time. I don't know why anyone would think I would be colluding or working with them. I'd hate fucking Riot Games. That's well established. Well, do you know what I really hate? I hate when young people get fucking exploited in this business. Always have, always will, and that's never going to stop because we keep letting bad people have positions of power and authority in this business. And, you can't always take a player at their word when they're in a fucked up power dynamic. So, again, you would have thought Doublelift, a guy himself who came out and talked about how he was being bullied by Reginald and how shit TSM was, you think he'd be cognizant of these things, but somehow Doublelift never really seems to connect all of the independent thoughts that just bounce around in his head. He never really creates a consistent worldview. It's just whatever's presented in front of him, he'll just say how he feels about it at that moment, even if it wildly contradicts what he said yesterday. That's just him, I guess.
They know he's an idiot. They know that he fucked up really big time, right? But they also, the players also know that he didn't do this like super manipulative, career ruining shit where he's like fucking over a player and a team at the same time. This is not something that they believe that he did because, and this is even a player who is allegedly one of the people who would be like affected by this. Yeah, I mean, I personally, the way I see it is like, if you're going to accuse him of this other stuff, all of this other stuff, this is huge. Like, I think what they're really trying to do, if I had to guess, is I think TSM is trying to scapegoat Peter Zhang for their terrible last year and a half. In the last year, TSM has lost almost all of their League of Legends goodwill. They went from being one of the top teams, a well-respected team that everyone wants to play for, to a complete shit show. And I think that it was very convenient that this person had already gotten grounds for firing and that they can just blame these failed pickups and this failed split and the failed like last year essentially on Peter Zhang. That's what I think. Dexterdo gets this sort of inside scoop before anyone else does. And I'm just wondering, like, where the fuck are they getting this sort of information?
Again, yes, I am known for getting inside scoops before anyone else. Kind of my thing. Kind of the thing of all the good journalists in the world. How do we do it? It's witchcraft. How do we do this? Crazy.
Where's the proof? Because this is kind of like a life-ruining article. It's really convenient for them to paint the picture that this guy manipulated and pulled the strings behind the scenes and just caused our roster to be horrible, as opposed to just taking responsibility that they just picked a terrible roster. It's so easy for them to just go to a fucking news site like Dexterdo and be like, yo, this is what happened, bro. Let's make an article about it. That is such an unfair accusation to make. They didn't release this, Dexterdo did. You cannot make that assumption. You are no worse than everyone assuming Peter did what he did. Not yesterday you came out saying so many different things about Peter, but now you just want to shit
also
on TSM.
True.
No, I just want them to have proof. It's true that I actually don't know whether or not TSM released this to Dexterdo, but I do based on everyone that I've talked to, I think that it was so under wraps. Like who the fuck is talking to this site and like leaking this unfounded rumor? Someone has to be the source of the article. Yeah, exactly. Regardless of whether or not TSM actually leaked it to them.
Yes. Someone has to be a source. Obviously, for an allegation of this nature, multiple sources would be required. This is a story of a severity. I wouldn't run it on the basis of a single source unless that source was absolutely uniquely compelling. You always verify things like this. I've had a number. I've said this before. I mean, this could have been like a crazy year for me because I missed out on some massive fucking stories. Actually, I missed out on the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard. A source left me a message like, big news. Get in touch. And I was like, yeah, not today. I've got a hangover. And it was that. So I missed out on that one. But yes, multiple sources are required for this. So yes, someone does indeed have to be the source of the information, yeah.
The fact is, it doesn't matter who the source is, actually. All that matters is there's no proof of the part where he's acting as a player agent. No, it was definitely not me. What the fuck? Absolutely not. You guys think that I'm like that juicy for fucking no. I'm way too lazy to talk to some random ass writer for Dexterdo. Okay, let's read the bottom part.
Let's not. So yes, this random ass writer from Dexterto, a new publication. The thing is, obviously, he must have just forgotten that we've done interviews in the past. He must just have blanked that. I guess, you know what, it's fine. I'm not going to catch feelings over that. That's whatever. Crazy. And then it's relatively like harmless. And then you start looking at these comments. Like it's mad, like what people believe. There was that took Sword Art's money meme. But like you see some of the things that they say here, like the fucked up thing from articles like that is that many people will have read that about Peter, believed it. And even now that it turns out there is no evidence, I've got no evidence. Apparently, players denied wrongdoing. A player did. Many will not see that or will believe what the original article said. I only stumbled on this video in my recommended. The damage is often done before guilt or innocence is proven. Then somebody does say Richard Lewis wrote the article, and he said, like, I trust him because of his record. And then somebody just goes, blind faith is meaningless. Well, it's not blind, is it? It's not blind that I have this like unprecedented accuracy record. That's not blind faith, is it? That's like it's like putting your faith in, you know, a really skilled surgeon to save your life, isn't it? That's not, it's blind faith. You just trusted him ridiculously. How many appendectomies have you performed, doctor? 10,000. You ever lost a patient? No. Right, okay, he's taking my appendix out, that guy. Someone there as well. I have zero respect. They've lost all respect for me. This aged well, I put that in. No replies as of yet. I can't help but notice no one's come along for that. People trying to be lawyers. There you go. Check this guy out. Sometimes I do think maybe I never came back from one of those DMT trips. Damn. What's crazy is that double from just reading the first half of the twit long. This, by the way, reads like Clockwork Orange. He was able to take missing information and piece together to what he thinks is the bigger picture. Then after reading the summary at the end, it was almost exactly like Double had said. Man's a fucking G. Very mature take. And I appreciate your understanding of the situation. I like right away how you stuck with the facts and didn't read his feelings part. I think his feelings are important, but I agree with you that there's evidence and information that needs to come first. Defamation in the form of libel. If what he's saying is true, then he would have a great libel suit. I really want to know who RL's source was. He was so adamant about him being a herald of legitimate and fair reporting. So this article, if proven false, is going to be a huge fuck up in his part. Respect to DL for being very level-headed and even-handed. Another one there, Team Stole Mercedes. We like it. Any actual lawyers, I'm guessing this is Tommy Hopkins QC here, any actual lawyers know if this would be libel by Deserto if the conflict of interest, not the sword art stuff, were false? Seems like everything I looked up says the publisher has to have made the false allegations in a willfully defamatory manner. I wouldn't worry too much about it, Tommy Hopkins. That's a good one. Double is completely brainless. The Deserto article clearly outlines that one side is the claims from TSM and the other is from Peter. The article doesn't even claim that either side is right or wrong. It literally just places the claims of both sides onto the record. Yeah, it does. Did do that. Deserto equals tabloids confirmed. Now, I feel bad blaming Peter. I should have known. It's TSM. Why did I trust TSM? It's not TSM, it's me. I'm the one who wrote the story. I smell a dark cloud of Reggie behind this. Very unbiased from DL. Good shit. Journalist, use one word and says wild shit. There's like a really good reply where it says, he has only broke one story 7 years ago. It's in one of the replies. Have to find it. It's too good. Yeah, here you go. That's not a random ass writer. It's Richard Lewis himself. So, some random ass writer. Like, these people don't get it. They don't understand Richard Lewis's track record. Has 2 Esports Journalist of the Year awards under his belt. Clown show. Shut up, kid. The guy has been in journalism less than a decade. Right, not true. He has won no notable awards for his journalism. He has broken no major stories outside of a match-fixing scandal 7 years ago. No hate on the guy. But stop acting like he's some revered Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist or like he was behind the Pandora Papers. Only has 2 Esports Journalist of the Year awards. From who? The same organisation that gives out streamer awards. Don't act like it has some major authority within journalism. So anyway, he's done it again, and he's done it again in an award year. Feel free to go and cast your vote in the Esports Awards. Vote Richie Lou for the 3-peat. Why not? This was a big story, and now I was right. Get me that 3rd meaningless award that's given out by people that give streamers awards.